you guys have already figured out, this is kind of the webinar format. So we'll be using the chat function, to have everyone kind of chime in and ask questions and everything. And then Haley and I will go through the presentation. I think maybe we'll give it just another minute to see who else might be joining, but otherwise I'll start. We can at least get the ball rolling with introductions. So my name is Nick and I work at Special Olympics Pennsylvania, based out of the Norristown office. I've been there now 2 years, which seems crazy to think. Certainly doesn't feel like 2 years, but that said, this will be my third leadership presentation. And to be quite honest, this is always one of my favorite parts of the year. I really, really enjoy these presentations and the whole leadership weekend in general. But at least from my perspective, especially from dealing so much with like social media, digital media, talking to athletes, volunteers, local programs, all that, I find it really valuable to kind of have this time to have a conversation, to learn what everyone is most interested in and how we at the state level can kind of help, facilitate making all that happen, and really just learn from each other. So basically the presentation is going to cover a couple different things, but namely how, a little bit of how we've adjusted as Special Olympics Pennsylvania, given the pandemic and everything that goes on, and how we've adjusted our content there. That will segue into some things that you can do, during this time to make sure that everyone is still active, tuned in, excited about, what we're doing and how we're doing it, despite how different at times things may look or seem. And then, as always, it wouldn't be digital marketing, PR presentation without some social media tips and tricks. And also you'll see, we'll get to it, but in the presentation, there is a link to last year's slide deck as well, which has a ton of more like in-depth social media stuff, if you're interested in that, for sure. And then we'll also talk about everyone's favorite Zoom, which I would assume we're at least a little bit familiar with since we're all on it at the moment. And then I want to make sure to, at the end, leave really ample time for questions, because to me, especially when we're in person, but hopefully it will carry over virtually or digitally as well. That's really the most valuable time that I have during these sessions, is to help answer questions, figure out what might be on people's minds, and how we can kind of troubleshoot together. So we'll definitely be sure to leave time for questions at the end if I ever stop rambling here and, and let Haley introduce herself.
Thanks, Nick. I'm Haley. I am the Marketing and PR Manager. I have been with Special Olympics since October, so not quite a year, but it has felt like it. I guess we can all kind of relate with the pandemic going on, but it's been great, and I'm very excited to be having my first leadership conference, even if it's virtually. So I'm excited to get the ball rolling.
Did they send you like little snacks and coffee and things that you can eat in between sessions, or you kind of just take that as a no snacks? All right. So I think we're good. It looks like we have really good attendance here. So thank you so much, everybody. I know a lot of times the last thing we want to be doing is getting on another Zoom webinar. So I really hope that you'll find this information useful. And kind of like I said, feel free to use the chat. If you have a question at any time, throw it up there. We'll answer it and kind of do the best we can in the time that we're given here. So yeah, the topic is when the content stops flowing, and we can all guess kind of when that happened and how that happened. But just to go forward a little bit here, what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about how things are different now. Obviously some of that is self-explanatory, but just from a digital sense as well, how they're different, what goes into a virtual event, and kind of hand in hand with that, how do we as the Special Olympics program stay relevant, given the fact that a lot of our opportunities and what we normally encounter aren't able to happen at the moment. And then we're going to talk a little bit about ways to engage with our athletes, with other volunteers, with families and friends, to kind of keep that relevancy. We'll also give some quick photo and video tips and a little bit of social media tips. But again, we'll have a link to last year's presentation that was really, really heavy on the social stuff. But if you have questions on that, ask away. We'll be happy to answer them. Haley, who is our resident Zoom expert at SOPA, is going to fill us in on some things you may not know about how to use Zoom and some other cool features that it offers. And then, like I said, time for questions and our contacts. So how did we get here? Obviously, we all kind of had that text or phone call that we got the day before or the morning of indoor winter games, that it was going to be postponed or canceled. And obviously, in retrospect, and unbelievably good decision by everyone involved, just given, excuse me, what we came to learn and know about what kind of happened in the fallout after that. So I'm very thankful to our leadership for that. But then it was kind of like a big period of scrambling, right? Like, what do we do? What's happening? And news kept coming out about the virus, what it means. And in that period, everyone kind of looked to adjust or pivot in their own way without, I think, really zeroing in on a standard of content or knowing what to post and when, which in a lot of cases was a really good thing, because I think it led to a lot of creativity and a lot of unique content that we didn't really see before, which is why we have here unique content kind of runs in cycles. Like, there's always going to be excuse me, someone who puts something out there that you had never seen before, and it's awesome, and then that kind of gets replicated and changed a little bit and shared. So it's really capturing that first moment, and we want to be on that first wave of that creation that's going to help us continue to keep people involved and engaged. So what's different now? Obviously, this meeting itself is very different. Under normal circumstances, we would all be in the same room, hanging out, have a big projector and stuff like that. But that said, I don't think that offhand we should dismiss this format, not only for this meeting, obviously, but for other ways that we engage our athletes or fellow volunteers, et cetera. Just because it's different, because it does have a lot of benefits. For example, I feel like, and I don't know if you feel like it on the other end too, but I feel like it's almost even a little bit more personal than being in a big hall or speaking to a bunch of people. I can kind of look directly into the camera. You're obviously seeing me and Haley, and depending on the format, obviously this is a webinar, but sometimes we can see you here, we can see you in the chat and say hello to everybody. So I do feel like there's definitely some advantages to this digital virtual way of doing things if it's done correctly, and also if it's not overkill, which I know some of us are definitely experiencing, just in the number of calls, not only through Special Olympics, but just in life in general, that we're all going through. So also what's different is I think we are spending a lot more time on devices, which might not be the greatest thing. You would think, as someone who handles a lot of the social media for Special Olympics Pennsylvania, that I would be gung-ho about it. But I don't necessarily love it. I think it's good in bursts, but I for sure find myself being addicted to it a little bit at times where I don't want to be, or just kind of scrolling or refreshing without real purpose. So I think in understanding those behaviors, and I'm sure some of you feel that from time to time as well, like in understanding how and why we do that, we can also understand what content we are drawn to. Like when we're scrolling through that infinite scroll of Facebook or Twitter, why do we like what we like? Why do we decide to comment on something? Why do we decide to share something? And if you kind of take some of those habits and look inwardly and say, oh, why did I like that? Why did I share that? You're going to find a lot of the answers, and as we go forward in this presentation too, you're going to find a lot of the answers as to what type of content maybe that we should be creating or we should be promoting lie within that personal preference, which makes sense, right? Like I always say, social media is supposed to be social. We're supposed to talk, we're supposed to communicate, we're supposed to share. So I think leaning back into that a little bit more as we go forward is going to be really important. I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to join us for some of our virtual events thus far, but they've been really fun. I think they've, I hope they've done a good job of at least capturing a little bit of the spirit of some of the events that were postponed or canceled because of COVID, while also bringing something a little bit new and unique to the table. So here, a virtual event is obviously something that an event that would have been held in person, and now we're kind of bringing it to someone's screen, to their device, to their phone, et cetera, and kind of, trying to capture the essence of that event. Thank you, Claire. I see that you did Summer Games. That's awesome. We were really excited about Summer Games and how that went, and kind of right now taking a lot of what was good and maybe some of what was not so good from that, and trying to use that for our virtual events going forward. So obviously don't have to watch the whole thing here, but here's just an example of one of our virtual events, and it was actually kind of our first virtual event. Let's see, I don't think you can see this, but maybe now you can see it. So this is loading, but this is the virtual Beaver Stadium run, and it's buffering, but essentially what you'll see is just kind of the structure of how we did things. If it ever loads, not sure why the internet's going so slow. Might have to, let's see. Okay, here we go. So I just want to kind of click through real quick and give you a little snippet of the screenshots, but okay, this is what we want. Okay, so one of the cool things about a virtual event, and this is kind of the screen that I wanted to land on, and obviously you're welcome to watch this on your own time if you missed it, but it allowed us to show multiple screens at once, which would be something we might not be able to do in person, especially not only for competition, something like Fall Fest or Summer Games, but this run as well. We had people from all over the state send in videos, and you can see different areas where they ran, have different people talking to you, and kind of absorb that all at once, instead of maybe just having to go to one event or one area or something like that. So I think that's a really cool benefit of a virtual event. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like 5 screens in one or whatever, but you can build in these kind of multi-layered aspects to something that you're going to do online that I think are really beneficial and unique and cool to the virtual space. So getting a little bit into the meat of everything here, the nitty gritty. What's next? Next is creating a little bit of a game plan. I think it's important in thinking about, you know, what attracts me when I'm looking at social media. Why do I click and share and like and all that kind of stuff? It's important to at least come up with a little bit of a rough outline of how you want to communicate with everyone, your athletes, your other volunteers, your parents, etc., and what you want to say to them, right? And some of the best ways to do that I've found is through creating a series. Um, and essentially that would be like, if you have an idea, and I've seen a whole ton of amazing ideas already from so many local programs, but whether or not that is, you know, coordinating a walk. We're going to walk from Bethlehem to State College, and athletes are going to register the amount of miles that they log and turn that in, and you know, we'll post about that. That can definitely be a series. You know, you can name it, you can brand it, you can come up with a super quick, fun little logo using Canva or another similar tool like that. And people will kind of buy in and feel that consistency a little bit more than they would a one-off post. With anything, there's always the chance that it can go viral, right? Or at least our equivalent of viral, which would be, depending on our platform, you know, anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 likes or comments or shares or whatever. But there's a lot more of a likelihood of getting someone to buy into that content if you're branding it appropriately, and also if it's something that they want to come back to, if it's something where you can check in, or if it's an episode 1 of 4 and you know, you create that want or that desire to have something to look forward to, which is really, in my mind, pivotal, especially now that a lot of in-person events are canceled or aren't happening. What are the ways that we as SOPA, as an organization, can replace that feeling of going to sleep and then having summer games to look forward to, going to sleep, having the plunge to look forward to, going to sleep, having this sectional or this golf outing to look forward to, right? Like, that is a lot of the draw of it. And I think if you combine that with thinking about, okay, well, in addition to, yeah, looking forward to sports and fundraisers and all that is amazing and really great. What else do we provide as an organization to our athletes, to our volunteers? And it's that connection, right? Like, it's that family feel, it's wanting to feel connected to other athletes, not only within our own counties, but other counties who we see at big events and stuff like that. So in uniting the community, virtually, we can recapture a lot of that. And we can kind of tie that into that series so that we're knocking two major kind of big stones or check marks or whatever you want to call it out of the way in integrating those into our virtual platform. We're creating a series so that people have something to look forward to, and it's fun and exciting, and you can know that it's coming. And then you're uniting the community around that series, and you're figuring out a way, whether it's like a live Facebook post or a group that you create on Facebook where people within your community can kind of talk to each other and keep tabs on what's going on and comment on what it is that's happening. And then this is a little bit of a one-off, but I think it's pretty important, especially now, given the current climate, but staying connected. I know we're all maybe a little bit fatigued, you know, with some virtual things, but I think if you know, if they're done well and in the right moment or the right time, they can be really useful. I know, you know, if I get a call or a text even from someone who I haven't heard from in a while, it can be pretty uplifting and honestly a pick-me-up in days that are largely spent indoors or in front of a screen or something like that. So whether it's establishing a group chat with a team of athletes that you're on, or a phone call or two, or even a phone tree or something, you'd be surprised at how beneficial that can be within this digital virtual space, in terms of not replacing, but at least a little bit of replicating or trying to create that touch point with a lot of people who we were used to seeing so frequently, and now maybe we don't see as often. And I will mention too, that's a good, a good way to touch base, especially phone call or text with people who might not be on social media for one reason or another. Okay, so this is kind of tied into the previous slide a little bit, but finding that focus is really key. It could be a series on what you're excited about for the fall. It could be a series on some tips and tricks in a sport that, a couple of your athletes are really passionate about and other athletes want to learn about. You're going to know best what kind of is the most important and hot topic of your program at the time. And I think playing into that and focusing on that is always going to be beneficial. I would definitely advocate for leaning into that focus as much as possible, as opposed to maybe spreading the focus into 5 or 6 different initiatives or events that are coming up or this and that. Like, honestly, even, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but like it's a lot that we as Special Olympics Pennsylvania can pass on information wise. This is happening, that's happening. Join this event, join that event. I don't think that it would be reasonable to expect everyone to be able to join every single event, or if not join, like do so wholeheartedly. So that's where I think what you're planning to provide content-wise can really benefit through a little bit of editing and going through that editing process and saying, okay, we really want to emphasize this month. Like, let's get everyone on board. Let's get everyone talking about this initiative. It's going to be beneficial. You're going to find a lot more engagement, and I think you're going to find a lot more interest in using that approach, as opposed to kind of spreading attention spans and bandwidths a little bit too thin, which is kind of, leans into this be mindful of amount and quality of posts. We don't necessarily want to have a situation where we're posting 3-4 times a day and people kind of tune out. You want to zero in on that content that is unique to your program, is really beneficial to everyone, and people are tuned in. They want to be involved, they want to be engaged, and they want to comment or call or text or whatever your medium may be in the virtual world. So here's where I'll definitely say, like, yeah, just take a moment, even if you have a pen and paper or you have the Notes app on your phone or anything like that, take a second, say to yourself, what is most important to you and to your athletes in your program? What is most important to the volunteers in your program? Write down what those things are. And if maybe you're struggling to figure out what those things are, write down, have a call with this team, have a call with, this athlete leader, try and maybe tune in a little bit more to what is most important right now. And in some cases that very well may be sports, and it might be, making sure to return to activities in the appropriate way and making sure everyone feels safe and comfortable in doing so. It might be figuring out how to best get involved in these virtual events. But in some cases, it might not have anything to do with sports. And I think that's okay. I think we're all learning and we're all growing in this new environment together. And I think the longer it goes, we all kind of realize that the expectation of a return to quote unquote normal is not necessarily something we can rely on now, whereas we're more wanting to, lean into some things that we can do to make us happy and feel good in the current climate. So I think focusing on this question, honestly, is really going to give us a lot of answers as to how to drive that content going forward, what to focus on, and what we all want to be talking about. That's what's most important, and playing into that and using that to drive what we just talked about a little bit in terms of setting up a series, et cetera, is going to be really beneficial. So all that combined, kind of that's the game plan, right? Like the playbook, the high level, looking at how things are going to be structured going forward. And then later on, we'll get into the details of, okay, logistically, how do I do that? What can I do to make a photo look good? Or what can I do to make this video go better? Or how can I maximize Zoom to get people to buy in? That's all kind of like the, the nitty gritty. But I think, again, take some time, jot some things down, figure out the answer to this question, and you're going to be on the right path. Okay, so that said, I do have a suggestion or two of some things you can do in the interim in terms of not only answering that question, but supporting your program and everything that goes on. And I might sound like a broken record for some of you who have attended some of these calls before, and if so, I apologize, but finding the stories is it. I think really so much value lies in connecting with our volunteers and our athletes and talking to them and learning their story, because so much of what we do is unique, and so much of what we do is uplifting, and telling those stories is only going to be really beneficial to everyone involved. It's going to be beneficial to the person who is having the story being told, because it's awesome. Like, who wouldn't want to share that and connect with their friends and family and say, hey, look at this, I did a pretty awesome thing. It's going to be beneficial for your outreach and honestly, retention of athletes during this time where that's a really important thing that we're going to need to focus on. And it's going to be important for people who are longing for some positive news right now. Honestly, it's kind of a bummer, the state of everything, with coronavirus and just a whole bunch of other stuff happening. So, finding these stories that can kind of unite your community and be uplifting is going to be awesome. So some ways to do that is obviously, talking to people, talk to people within your community and your program, and find out what's going on, what's interesting to them, what they've been up to, and share those stories. And on this slide, you'll see, some tips for interviews here. I won't run through all of them, and I should say, we'll make these slides available afterward as well, as a link. So they'll have all the links that you can click through within the presentation, and you can see everything that's bulleted here. But high level tips for interviews: definitely don't ask yes or no questions. You want to engage people and get them talking, and yes or no questions are kind of a dead end to doing that. My best tip for interviewing is just to make it a conversation. You can obviously go in with a list of things that you want to talk about, or some general topics or an outline. But I think in terms of you don't really want to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, here's my questions, and then just ask the questions and not necessarily listen to what's being said on the other end. I think it's going to be a lot more beneficial to ask a question, listen to what's being said, and then respond to that. Oh, okay, I didn't know that you went to Arizona, in 2019 to visit your family. I didn't even know your family lives there. Like, tell me a little bit more about that kind of thing. And then you'll learn more in that process, and it'll just become a deeper, more meaningful conversation. So these are just some general tips. Again, if anyone wants to, we'll put our emails at the end of this as well. But I can definitely help out a little bit more with some more detailed interview tips if that's something you're struggling with or more interested in. But this is definitely one of the best ways that you can kind of build your own content, especially now that it was so easy, right? Like, everything was tailor-made when we had events. Like, it was perfect. Practices leading up to events, you can get content from that. You can talk to someone there, and then the event itself is amazing. So wins the medal, and then you go and talk to them, and your content is built in that sense. We don't necessarily have that as much now. So I think interviewing people and finding their stories and, why they or how they got involved with Special Olympics, why they want to continue to be involved is really going to be beneficial and is beneficial during this time. So here's a couple short examples. I'm just going to click through really quickly to show everybody if my internet cooperates here. I don't know why it's going so slowly, but this, if you've seen it, is our 50 for 50 series where we're highlighting different athletes or volunteers throughout the state who are just, a microcosm of what we do and how we do it. So basically it's like the series number, the athlete or volunteer, and their name and their age. And we kind of use a lot of those same interview tips and tricks and let the story be told in their own word. And this is modeled after Humans of New York, if you've seen that series, but basically just allowing people to tell their story, say what's on their mind, and a pretty, cool photo or compelling photo of them. So that's definitely one example of how you can kind of turn that interview content into something that people are able to see. And I'm just going to open a couple tabs here so that we have them open. Okay, so this one is from Allegheny County, who has been doing something very similar on their Twitter account, and they are publishing a lot of photos and profiling athletes as well. So if I click on this here, you can see in a little bit more detail, this is a pretty extensive interview with an athlete, and it's their weekly highlight. So they, do an interview, pick someone to highlight and get that information out there, and it's been really successful. And it's just cool to see. It's cool to learn and know a little bit more about people in your community. Special Olympics International did something very similar where you can see, just this pretty compelling photo of an athlete speaking. And this isn't long, right? It's not a lot of text, maybe 70 words or so. But that's all it takes to tell a story, to engage someone and say that, hey, here's what's happening, here's what's interesting, and here's what we want to share with you. And if you can make that a part of a series or something similar, even better. It's pretty powerful stuff, but as you can kind of see, as we talk about the back end of everything, not necessarily too difficult. And then there's a video interview too that I won't queue up right now, just in terms of fear of endless buffering, but you can watch that on your own time and see how one of those would go as well. Some other ways that you can engage the audience as part of this series or as just part of your content plan in general, since we don't have those big events or things that we can share photos from, you can create a group or a group chat and just kind of get people talking, reconnect everyone and say, hey, what have you been up to? How you feeling? How are you dealing with all this? What do you think about X, Y, Z? It can just be really beneficial to have those kinds of conversations. I mentioned the challenge earlier. Bethlehem did something where, it was like a step challenge to get to Penn State that I thought was awesome. I see a couple other local programs doing like raffles or other things where you can win prizes. That's really awesome. I would say continue to, build on that if that's working for you, or if you're a program that's interested in that, by all means, let us know if you have any questions and we can help facilitate. And yeah, just ask what's interesting, ask what people are thinking about, ask what they're doing, ask how they're feeling. Like I said, it's kind of a weird, bizarre, strange time for everyone. And the more we can kind of rely on each other to know what's going on and ask what's happening, I think the better off we're going to be. And then in turn, using that to be our content. Like, that's what's interesting right now. It's what people are talking about. And, if an athlete sends a picture of them and their dog, go for it, post it. Like, it doesn't have to be sports related. Or, if an athlete is doing one of the virtual workouts or training for a sport from home, definitely share that. Like that's what we can relate to. And I think in, you know, reconnecting to that theme from the beginning that we talked about, why am I sharing this? Why is this interesting to me? You know, the more you look at that content, the more you'll realize it is that kind of stuff. It's that personal touch. It's that, you know, that relatable, connectable content that is going to drive participation and engagement in the future. It wouldn't be one of these sessions without a stat. So 91% of all social media use is on a mobile device. So that's really telling. It, to me, says that by all means, go ahead and create your social content on your mobile device. In some cases, that might not be possible, obviously, if you're like editing a video or if you want to do some detailed photo editing and stuff like that. But in a lot of cases, it is possible. I think the more we lean into like, you know, using this mobile device and kind of realizing that's how people are digesting the information, the more it's going to be beneficial to publish information on it, because it's the platforms are just going to kind of play into one another well that way. And you can see that with Facebook already, right? Like if you use Facebook on your phone versus your desktop, it's a completely different experience, and they're kind of pushing everyone in that direction to want to continue using mobile and all that kind of stuff. So this again is just some really quick and easy ways to engage people, I say to bring fans back, but you know, to continue to keep fans as well. But in some cases, maybe it is bring fans back. But you know, really, really simple things. Could be a throwback post, which I would highly recommend right now, especially since we're all missing that element of competition or being in person. You know, the more throwbacks, the better. And it's not necessarily something that's too difficult. It's something that's easily repeatable. You can make it into a series. You know, obviously, we're not going to complain if you share posts from SOPA or SOI. Feel free to, you know, repost or share our content. You know, thanking someone is really simple and easy. I know that was a really popular thing to do at the height of the pandemic, you know, late March, early April, but it's never bad form or out of style to say thank you to anyone within your program who's doing something cool or that, you know, you're really thankful for. Same goes with like birthday posts or asking a question. You know, literally go on your phone, whatever you're using, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Ask a question about, is everyone excited for XYZ? What did you think of this? How are you feeling about that? It's a really simple, quick, easy, effective way to drive engagement. So you can see all the rest here. I won't go through all of them point by point, but suffice to say, you know, feel free to do any of those and engage with your audience. Here, we're getting into and transitioning a little bit more to the technical side of things, how we're going to do, you know, what we're doing, and live video is definitely a great way to do that. So, you know, Zoom would count for this for sure, but obviously like a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live is going to have a little bit more of that instant chatting, I'm watching, I'm chatting vibe to it. So pros and cons. The pros are it's very, very interactive. It's real time, it's live, it's candid. You can kind of turn around, show everybody what's going on, where you are, and you feel so close to the action. You feel like connected to them, right? Like you're in my space right now, but even it feels even a little bit different than when you would be doing it on your phone for some reason. I don't know if that makes sense, but cons, it's very hard to edit in real time. And in some cases you can't edit, obviously. So which means stuff can go wrong. And then the internet connection that you have can play a factor in, but live video is definitely something to consider in terms of just connecting and feeling in touch, feeling in tune with everyone who's watching and participating in what's going on. So here are some tools that you can use, not just for live video, but for editing some of your content. Canva we've talked about before, I won't click on that, but feel free to visit that site, canva.com. It is amazing. It has so many tools for anything you could ever want in terms of editing graphics, flyers, posters, social media content, blah, 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 blah. Like it's really cool and really helps to boost your online presence. The same with Adobe Spark. I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but Spark also allows you to create websites. It allows you to create videos really, really easily. Like it's super user-friendly and easy to engage with. And it also allows you to create social media graphics in the same way that Canva does. So all of that is kind of really, really useful and built within Spark, and it's free. So I would recommend trying that out. And something that hasn't been mentioned before is OpenShot. So if you do want to dip your fingers or toes into really easy video editing, this is an awesome place to do it. It's completely free, so you can download it. You see a download button up here. Free open source software that you can download and use right away. It's really, really simple to use. Sometimes video editing software can be a little bit daunting or like confusing, tricky to use. So basically this is drag and drop. Like you would take the videos that you want to use and you can see here it's like track, track, track. So you have your audio, you have your video, you drag it into place and kind of, you know, very user-friendly, very easy way to create your own videos. So if, again, this is just if video content or video creation is something that you're looking into, not a bad place to start by any means. And then that said, if you are looking to go down that path, top 3 video editing tips would be number 1, definitely don't try to do too much. Quick cuts are really, really good and really, really useful. There's no need to get too fancy with a ton of transitions or bog down the product with graphics. Like if you're recording an interview or if you're recording, you know, anything else along those lines, like someone who's doing a workout or a training session from home or an instructional video or something like that. Keep it simple. It's going to be the content that carries the video anyway, not all the bells and whistles. That said, come up with a little bit of a storyboard to know what video clips you want to put where. It's going to help immensely in terms of your video editing process. And third, time works a little bit differently with an actual video than real life. Like in real life, you would think that 4 seconds is incredibly short and not a long time. Excuse me, for a video, that's a really, really long time. Like keeping something up for 4 seconds is going to seem like an eternity to the viewer. Excuse me, 1 second. All right. Hydrate is the video tip number 4 that's not listed here. But so yeah, 4 seconds is going to seem like a really, really long time for like keeping a photo up or just something happening. So keep that in mind as you're going forward with that. Also, straying away from video and going toward photo, do not underestimate the power of photos. Posting one good photo. Oh, and real quick for everyone who's watching, I want you to take your phone out, and I'm trusting this is on the honor system because I can't see all of you, which would be a benefit of being in person, but just look on one of your social media feeds or even through your text or something like that. Check it out and see how much of that content is a photo. Like what percentage of what you're seeing do you think has a photo attached to it? And I would be willing to bet that like 88% of it has a photo or a video clip attached to it. So that's just a quick exercise and example to show that when you are coming up with posts and you are thinking about, you know, putting something out there, it's going to be really, really crucial to have a photo or a short video clip attached to whatever you're posting. That said, we've talked about the importance of cropping and knowing when and how to focus. I think a lot of that's intuitive, but what might not be intuitive is like taking a photo and then cropping it before you post it instead of just uploading it. So, really being sure to focus on the subject, focus on, what drew you to wanting to take that photo is important. And I want to stress this a lot, to play to your strengths. Right now, seeing images of people in their homes, in their backyards, doing stuff from home is appealing. It's like, oh, I'm doing that. I'm going through that. So, you are too. I want to see that. So I think, even this picture of like someone in their house with all their medals laid out and all that kind of stuff is engaging, because we all are feeling that too. So definitely lean into that kind of content for sure when you're posting photos. Here you can see kind of like at the top a badly cropped image on the left-hand side of Izzy here at Villanova, versus at the bottom one that's a little bit more properly cropped. And here is a link to, you can click this when we send out the presentation. I'm not going to go through it now, but everything you could ever want in terms of social media sizing. Like, it has a list of all the platforms, and it says if you're posting a photo on Facebook in the news feed, make it this size. If you're posting a photo on Twitter in the news feed, make it this size. And this photo in the middle is kind of an example of how Twitter can crop your photo and it looks a little bit weird and cut off. So we'll get into this too deep now, but if you're interested, definitely click on that and check it out to see what the best sizes are for all your social. Again, when we send out the presentation, this is going to be a link to last year's presentation, which has a lot of social media tips and tricks and all that other good stuff in it. And with that, I think I have exhausted all of my windbaggedness, and we'll turn it over to Haley to talk about Zoom.
Thanks, Nick. So yeah, Zoom. I know everyone is probably pretty familiar with this. I think we've been using it so much. So I'm just going to jump right in. So Nick, if you want to go to the next slide. So I'm just going to touch on first some general Zoom features. So obviously what we're doing right now, you can share your screen, you can interact in the chat. People are welcome to join Zoom by phone, or by video. You can record, so like we're recording this session. I'll touch on this later, but you can record interviews. Nick was just mentioning videos. You can use Zoom as a tool to get some videos for your social channels. You can share computer audio, so you can play videos with each other. You can play music. You can always have fun with virtual backgrounds, challenge people to come with a funny photo and join the meeting with a virtual background. And yeah, as you can see here, this photo is just kind of the free version of Zoom, what that dashboard would look like and where all those tools are located. It's really simple and user-friendly. Everything's just kind of right on that bottom toolbar. Next slide. Yeah, perfect. So I want to talk for a little bit about recording a video via Zoom. So the first thing you're going to want to do if you want to record a video where you're actually going to, post it on your YouTube channel or Facebook or somewhere, you definitely want to go check out your recording settings. That's going to be in your local recording. So if you have the free version of Zoom, it's going to record right to your computer. And whether you're in gallery or speaker view will show what that looks like. So if you're in gallery view, you're going to see everyone all on the screen. And if you're in speaker view, it's going to switch between who's talking. So when you're thinking about how you want this video to look, you can see down here, that image is from our virtual sports camp opening ceremonies. We wanted our MCs to be together on screen. So we chose to record in gallery view. That way they were both on screen at the whole time and it wasn't switching back based on who was talking. So if you are the host and you're the one hitting record, how you have your Zoom set up is how that's going to record. It's really important if you're looking to have a nice clean video is to hide those non-video participants. When we were recording virtual sports camp, there was more than 2 of us on the call, but all we wanted the video to be was just those 2 speakers. So even when you cut off your video, you'll notice in Zoom that it'll still say your name with the black background. So there is actually a button, if you hover over your own video, those three little dots pop up, and one of the options is to hide non-video participants. And that will really help you, especially if you're recording in gallery view. And if you're thinking about turning this into a video, it's okay to have pauses. You want pauses in there to allow you to edit better, or if you're in speaker view and you're interviewing someone and you're off camera and they're on camera, you want to give it time, Zoom time, to switch to that other person's camera. If conversation's too quick, it can get a little funky when you're trying to edit this video when you're no longer talking, but someone else is, and your black screen is still up. So those pauses, they won't be awkward. And if they are, you can edit them out. And that's the perfect part of Zoom. Multiple takes are totally fine. Like Nick showed, that super simple editing software. If you are, doing an interview and someone's, they get tongue-tied or they want to redo it, just let them redo it. Zoom is the perfect place to record that. And, really have fun with it. Play into the fact, like Nick said, lean in to the fact that, we are all at home. I think in our virtual Summer Games opening ceremonies, we had the co-MC's cat popping in and out of the video, jumping around behind her. And people love those surprise appearances by our pets, or like to see, what people's backgrounds look like. It doesn't have to be this super professional video. So if you're looking for like easy content to populate on your social channels, you can set up a simple recording with you or you and a couple other athletes and hop on Zoom and just record talking about, what they've been up to, or, what they miss about SOPA, what they're looking forward to, all that kind of good stuff. My one suggestion would be, if it's just you and one person and you don't want to be on camera, one of the options you can do is to spotlight that video. That way it's always on that one person the whole time. That's also in the same section where you'll find hide non-video participants. That way it doesn't really switch from a black screen to the person, and it's just like this really nice flow of your voice and then the person answering. So that's kind of some tips. For those of you who don't like Zoom, there are a ton of other options, including some that are not on this slide, but some other very friendly web conferencing options are Skype, which is really similar. There's a mobile app, Google Hangouts. If everyone has Gmail, that's a super easy way for everyone to join. Facebook Messenger, you can do that too. There's a video conferencing option within that. And you can, if you Google like video conferencing option, there's so many different things out there and so many different versions. And you can really find one for, the number of participants that you're looking for, the different settings that you're looking for. If you're just looking to join and chat with everyone and you don't need to record or all that stuff, Facebook Messenger, Google Hangout, Skype, they all have those simple options as well. Yeah, Google Duo is another great one, and House Party is another good one as well. That's a mobile app, and it actually has built-in games. So if you're looking to have more of an interactive session, that one can be pretty cool. And go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, it's great that you brought that up, because kind of like I was saying a little bit earlier about, it doesn't all need to be sports content. Like, I think especially playing some games with your team that are virtual games, like, getting on like a house party, or like a Jackbox is another one that's like really fun to play with a group and you can all play remotely and stuff. That's awesome. Like, that's definitely encouraged and can be really fun, especially like I said, in this time where we're all kind of wanting a little something to look forward to. So here is a link to all of our social media channels. If you're not familiar, so when the presentation is sent out, you can click right on this and it'll take you to them and you can check out what's happening. I will say YouTube is definitely becoming a favorite of mine. It's skyrocketing up the priorities list a little bit, not only because of the pandemic and everything kind of leaning toward video, and this was in last year's presentation a little bit too, about how popular YouTube is and how much video content is uploaded every second, basically. But it's also really user friendly, and it doesn't require logins the same way that some of the other social media platforms do to be able to participate and interact and stuff. So I think that's really cool about it. And so, yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into the chat. While you're typing, we did receive one question ahead of the webinar via email. So that's in the presentation here, and I'll just read it as well. It says, what steps should a coach or program director take when hearing about an athlete in another program / county that is struggling with isolation and being so alone during this pandemic? So that's an awesome question. And without, overstepping bounds, is I'm not necessarily, in the field team or deal specifically with reaching one program to another, et cetera, but at least in terms of social media outreach and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I think, connecting with someone and, whether it is through one of these means, through a Facebook group, or whether it is through a quick message on one of these social media platforms, or even a call or a text, and just, ask how you're feeling, ask what you're missing about Special Olympics, maybe ask about some of, your favorite memories or moments that will bring back little periods of joy and stuff like that. I think that can all be really beneficial. I keep going back to the slogan that we had way back in March, and like Beaver Stadium run times, like, stronger together. We're kind of all in this together. And I think, the more that we can check in on one another and, look out for one another, the better off we're going to be. So I hope that helps answer the question a little bit. I mean, I guess outside of, directly reaching out to that athlete via a social platform, or, phone call, text, all that kind of stuff, or email, that kind of thing. The rest would be relying on them to kind of see what we're posting and see that content. But I think making that connection or making that, that doing that outreach is never a bad thing. Cynthia, yeah, hey, so where can we find this presentation? We will make the link available right after this, so everyone can kind of go through and click through everything. And like I said, it also has a link to last year's presentation, which has a lot of good social media tips in there as well. And then we got a question here from Frank. Are there any unique protective behaviors to consider when using social media or Zoom conferences? So I can answer on behalf of social media, and Haley, I think, could probably answer on behalf of Zoom, if that works. And yeah, I mean, social media is always really tricky, right? It's like, it's a very personal platform. So everyone kind of owns their own social media and determines what others can or cannot see. So unfortunately, as an organization, we don't necessarily have the ability to police everyone's personal social media account, but in terms of one's self wanting to limit or prohibit what other people can see, there are absolutely a ton of options within the settings of a particular account that will allow you to kind of tailor that account to customize what other people can see about you. So in terms of protecting your own content or your own posts or your own information, you are in full control of that for sure. And I can help provide links if anyone is interested in learning more about that. In terms of a local program, account, you know, prohibiting or protecting what people say. If you have an athlete or a volunteer that's within that program that is saying something on their own social media that is no good or offensive or hateful, you should report that to us at the state office right away. And we have a team in place that can kind of handle that from, you know, in a step-by-step kind of, you know, ordered process. If it's something where someone is commenting on a post and it's negative, or you know, you don't really like what they're saying, you do have administrative rights within your page where you can hide a comment, you can block a person from commenting, you can message a person directly and ask them, why are you saying this, what's happening, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, you know, those are some of the general protective behaviors that are in place for sure. And I'll let Haley speak a little bit more on the Zoom side of things.
Yeah, so when using video conferencing, Zoom especially, you know, the easiest way to protect your meeting is to have a passcode, right? Zoom, right when you're creating that meeting, just require that passcode. That way, you know, you have to have a passcode to enter, and that pretty much locks that down. If you see some weird sign on, enter, and you know it's not one of your athletes or volunteers, you can remove people from a meeting. So if it's like some really weird name and you think you're getting hacked, you know, remove that person or just shut the meeting down, shoot an email out to all of your people and just send that a new link. And I believe that a couple of those other video conferencing, you know, Skype, Google Hangout, I think they have like passcode or certain security options as well. So just when you're looking to create your meeting, just kind of look through that, and you know, you just check a box and it automatically generates a code. And you know, if you're looking to keep a meeting more private, just don't broadcast that link out on too wide of a network. I think, okay, we have a question from Thomas Marine. Will you be available to help build a specific webinar? I believe Nick and I, you know, we're both willing to help with any need anyone has. If you have a specific idea, want to run something past us, we are more than willing to help with anything. Just shoot us an email. Our emails are up on that screen. We're happy to talk through any tech questions, content questions, you know, anything you need. We are certainly here to help.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't stress that enough. Like, you know, I view a large part of my job as being able to help out with that kind of stuff. And, you know, any questions, any tech help, especially now that we're kind of all in this, you know, weird virtual, who knows what to make of it, kind of digital space as we go forward. More than willing to help out with whatever anyone would like help with. So we also have another question here from Anthony. Is there a way for counties to have their events posted on the SOPA website or Facebook page? That is a great question. I would say absolutely, especially as it pertains to the website, but especially, well, I guess as it pertains to both, honestly, but it just depends a little bit on what exactly the event is. And how we would be promoting it. I guess on, at least in terms of social media, it gets a little bit trickier because there are potentially a lot of events if you factor in all of the counties that are having events. You know, it could be 15 events in 1 week, and that might be overload for someone who is trying to follow or get, you know, gauge what's happening on the Facebook page. But I would say that now more so even than when we kind of had our statewide general schedule of events that everyone knew what was coming up, please definitely, absolutely let us know whenever you have events coming up that you're excited about or things that you want to help us promote, and we can help promote. Even if it's not necessarily its own like main Facebook post, it could be a story on Facebook, it could be a Twitter post. It could be an Instagram story. It could be an Instagram post. It could be a blog post that you can then share out, and kind of just has like a more authentic, official feel to it. So the only way, that we'll be able to know about that kind of stuff is if you tell us about it, and then once we hear about it, we can help promote and do as much as we can to get interest in it. Especially, like I said, if it's something that would be beneficial to everyone and garner like a lot of interest, because we're always looking for new and unique events, especially now. So yeah, great question, Anthony. We have another question here from Jill that says, we are having trouble getting athletes to engage on Facebook. Do other programs have more success with other platforms, Twitter, Instagram, etc.? Whoops, sorry, well, that's just the thank you slide at the end, but so that's a good question. I guess that would be, best answered by the local programs who do have those accounts. I have found that definitely the most or highest engagement rate is from Facebook. I personally, and this is strictly a personal point of view, don't love Facebook. I don't know, it's just not the best for some things. And for other things it is, so it's tricky, but I would be more than happy to help kind of set up an Instagram or a Twitter account that might get athletes more engaged or involved. Twitter, I think, would be tough. Twitter is, to me, kind of more like a news aggregation or like information sharing platform rather than like a conversational platform. A conversation can occur, but I think it would be a little bit tougher. So, I mean, Instagram could be cool. A group on Facebook could be cool, or I mean, things like WhatsApp, or GroupMe, or group chat services that are mobile, that really have a high level of engagement, and people can text back and forth. They can share GIFs, they can share pictures, they can upload short videos or create polls and stuff. So it has a really big social media feel to it without having to have that like Facebook buy-in or that Instagram buy-in. So I would definitely recommend, and I'll put them in the chat here too. But
Nick, I would also say maybe it's, some athletes might not know how to utilize those social media channels. So, you could use Zoom to have a session to show athletes how to do that, or even I think our Healthy Athletes Going for Gold series, which is on Facebook, touched on some of that stuff. So you could even do a Zoom session and share that and walk everyone through how to utilize some of these platforms.
Jill, if you wanted to connect further, happy to help discuss other options. But yeah, I didn't have that in the presentation, but I mean, GroupMe and WhatsApp are honestly really good options for still having that social connection and being able to talk to other people and feel connected without having to go through the traditional, what we think of as social media channels. And to that end, Cynthia says, some of my athletes say they're getting tired of virtual, and completely agreed. I think a lot of people are getting tired of virtual, and it's easy to get burnt out, and it's frustrating, and it's a crappy situation. I think the unfortunate reality is that it's a situation we're going to be in for at least some time longer here. So figuring out how to make the best of it and also potentially not overburden athletes or volunteers with virtual content is going to be key. And that's kind of, earlier we mentioned like texting or a phone call, or if you're able to do so, within the guidelines of amount of people who can attend a social gathering, if you're all wearing masks, if you're properly sanitizing, et cetera, and obviously look to the return to play and gathering guidelines for all of this for sure. I'm not saying one way or another, but if you can congregate 6 to 8 feet apart in someone's yard with less than 10 people and kind of say, hey, what's going on? I miss you. This is, what I've been up to. That's going to be beneficial for sure. Just to kind of get out of that virtual cycle. But, I think virtual might take on this negative connotation if we continue to go about it in a certain way. But if we can mold and shape it in the way that, this is a new and exciting opportunity to work out with a buddy. This is a new and exciting opportunity to compete. We as an organization, I think, are going to put a real emphasis on making sure that not all of these virtual events look and feel the same, because that would be doing a disservice, I think, to how the events happen and occur in person. And also, like you said, Cynthia, kind of playing to that burnout. So I think, ultimately phone call and text for sure, but also rethinking a little bit of these virtual events and potentially figuring out their frequency is going to play a part in that as well.
And just be a little creative. I know it could be so difficult to find activities to do via Zoom, but there's a lot of articles out there, talent shows, movie nights, craft nights. There's a bunch of different ideas, even like with just trying to find things to do within your own home and limited resources. So trying to get creative could be helpful as well.
Absolutely. And Frank says, we had feedback that interactive Zoom is appreciated versus one way or just looking at YouTube videos. Very much agreed. In some cases, and we're kind of the pot calling the kettle here since we're not all looking at each other. In some cases, it can be tough because of like on Zoom, especially if you have 200 people or whatever, you need a certain account to do that. And then you can have the issue of feedback or having to scroll through a bunch of different videos to look at and see everybody. But I completely agree, Frank. I think face-to-face, even virtually, is very, very different than computer audio to face or face to computer screen, et cetera, et cetera. I think, YouTube and Facebook Live and these kinds of things do provide at least the ability to interact via text, and you can see who's saying what. And I think, even me right now, Frank, like I know you and I know that you typed it, I can kind of picture you, so that in the brain itself is useful, but completely agreed. I think whenever possible, especially if you're planning on doing some of these activities with a smaller team, like your flag football team or your floor hockey team or something, and you've got 15 athletes or whatever, like amazing. Do Facebook Messenger and get all the people on it in 1 or 2 chat videos, get your Zoom, get everybody on it. That's definitely going to be very, very beneficial. Everyone can see each other, laugh together, play together, that kind of thing. So for sure, I would recommend that whenever possible. It just gets a little bit tricky if it were to be, one of these statewide virtual events or something similar where it's, 150 people are attending and you need to worry about managing those videos. But yeah, completely agreed. We would emphasize doing that whenever possible. Anyone else have any other questions? Oh, here we go. We got one from Anthony. So we have a number of athletes that are not connected on social media, so we have sent limited information in the mail. Awesome. Yeah, I know that is definitely something that we try to be very cognizant of at the state level, in knowing and understanding that not everyone has social media or even access to a smartphone or a smart device or a tablet or something where you can do some of those things. So yeah, I mean, kind of throw it back to the old days sometimes, call people up and send them mail to get information. And I honestly kind of do get excited when I get mail nowadays. It's like so rare, that if you get mail from someone, or even like your alma mater asking you for money or something, it's like, well, at least they thought enough to send out some mail. Or it's nice. So I think that's a great idea, Anthony. I mean, I think especially if the mail leads to some sort of further engagement, like if it's mail of an upcoming uh, schedule, like a calendar of events, or letting people know what's happening, or just a letter to say we're thinking about you, and then why don't you kind of write back to us and share a story that you've been through quarantine, or something you're thinking about. um, I think that can be really beneficial. Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up? I know we took you a little bit over time, so I definitely apologize for that. But wanted to make sure that we got everyone's questions in and answered, and everyone felt good about the session. Um, but I'm not seeing any other questions roll in at the moment. So what we'll do, we will be sure to share the link to this presentation right away. And like, we both said, that has our email in it. Feel free to connect with us if you have further questions about anything and everything having to do with virtual, digital, PR, everything during the pandemic and otherwise, and we'll be happy to assist however we can. But um, I think I speak for both of us when we say, can't thank you enough for taking a Wednesday night out of your already super busy lives to hang out with us, and hopefully, got something from this presentation. And really thank you very much for everything you do for our athletes, for our organization, for each other. Words can't express how much we appreciate it. And thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you all soon.